Hello, basketball fans. I'm Dave, Fantasy Basketball Analyzer, and welcome to our Week 8 schedule breakdown to help you get ready to set your lineups. Before we get into all of the strength schedule and back-to-backs and everything else that we normally look at, I have to bring you important late-breaking news. And for that, we need beer. This week's beer is Public Access Emergency Broadcast. I find no more fitting beer for the groundbreaking, earth-shattering news that the Knicks hired my separated at birth brother, Coach Fizdale. Except it doesn't matter at all. He was put in an impossible situation, whether or not he's a good coach. And plenty of people, maybe most people, would argue he's not a good coach. There was no reasonable way to expect him to do well with the complete shit roster that's there for the Knicks. And worse off, a terrible configuration for RJ Barrett to even try and do well and grow. It's a terrible team. He's probably better off getting out of there, and it's bullshit that he's fired. So, emergency broadcast, clickbait, woo! Let's talk about some real hoops, guys. Take a look at Week 8 schedule. We got, the normal thing. You can read the 4 games, 3 games. Go ahead and hit pause if you need to. Grab a screenshot. Watch the video 20 times. I'll take the extra views. Go for it. But most of the teams are playing 4 games. So 3-game weeks are normally fine, but they are a little bit weaker this week. But the 2 games are what we're always concerned about. Dallas, Portland, San Antonio, Washington. Dallas, you're probably still playing the Virtuoso because he's been so great. But beyond Luka, I would sit down Porzingis. He's been a little slow anyway. I still think he's having a better basketball impact than fantasy impact because defenses are still covering him. He's creating spread. I think it's helping Luka play really well. Not that Luka needed help. That's why we call him the Virtuoso. But I think all those things are working in his favor, but not for your fantasy team and not at 2 games. So I think you, from Dallas, go ahead and play Luka. Portland, honestly, I think you sit them all. If you got Dame at 2 games, he might do better than most of your options. You shouldn't be playing Melo. I don't think CJ. I just think 2 games is too weak when there's so many people playing 4 games. San Antonio, I say sit everyone. I don't think there's anyone who's going to jump out at you. DeRozan's having a pretty good statistical year, and it's not worth it. At Washington, maybe you play Beal. Honestly, my biggest tip from all of this is with 2 games, David Bertrand somehow is only owned in 68% of leagues. So if you're playing in a weekly locked league, maybe someone has to cut him to make some room because he's only got 2 games. Go ahead and grab that big man. You get all those 3-pointers from that big. I think his ownership should already be higher than 68%. But if people cut him this weekend, you should jump in and nab him now so that you have him for the rest of the season. All right, with total games played in mind, let's get into it. Let's take a look at the pace of play and the defensive efficiency to figure out our own strength of schedule for fantasy. At the high end and low end are the only places I really feel like it impacts it. Playing 2 games versus 4 games is a much bigger deal than the strength of schedule. But if you're trying to split hairs, you're playing a deep bench and you're trying to figure out, Brogdon versus Jokic last week, 2 versus 4, that's where maybe there's an extra impact. The usual suspects up top and bottom. Washington, New Orleans, Atlanta, Memphis. Fast pace of play. Pretty weak defense. Really weak defense, actually. Put these guys up at the top. There's still some good teams beyond them. Portland, Houston, San Antonio for either the pace of play or weak defense. You can really get down there. Golden State's no longer in the top echelon as far as the statistics go. But I think that's probably more about pace of play than it is about their defense. And the numbers kind of back it up. So their defense isn't good because the team's not very good right now. But they've got D'Angelo Russell back. He's a big pick and roll operator. Golden State has not been playing pick and roll game. So the pick and roll can slow down the pace a little bit, which is going to give you slightly less opportunities because there's less possessions in the game. But that doesn't mean it's a stay away, right? Orlando has great defense and a slow pace of play. That creates them into a stay away. Toronto has very good defense, but they still play rather quickly. They might slow it down, but then someone like Jimmy Butler can come into town and have a good game this week, and it doesn't hold back his productivity. So take all of this with a grain of salt, but there is method to the madness, and this is how we look at it. All right, so now we're really getting into it. We're looking at the numbers. I've highlighted all the 2s and the 4s. You can see, I've marked out the bottom 4 and top 4 matchups in green or red, respectively. So going through and looking at it, nothing super stood out for me besides, like I said, Dallas. If you want to play Luka, if you want to play our Virtuoso, go for it. He's going against Detroit and Miami, two middle of the road teams, as far as fantasy matchups go. So Portland's playing 2 games. They've got the Knicks, which is a good matchup because they're terrible. And then they play Denver, and Denver's got a good defense and a slower pace of play. That's why I think Dame, anyone, you probably want to just sit them down this week with 2 games. You probably have a better option, but I don't know your teams. Sometimes you just can't do that, and you got to roll with your guys. San Antonio just hasn't been playing that well. The team's really bad. I guess it was bound to happen one day, but both Portland and San Antonio are actually the 2 teams when I'm doing like my projections, my expectations for who's going to make the playoffs. Like I don't pick against Popovich and I don't pick against Portland anymore because they both just seem to find a way to make the teams better than they are. And that doesn't look like it's happening for San Antonio anymore. Although I may have to eat the words, anyone else saying it, because last year they started off pretty slow and then just tore it up in December. But the team contract just doesn't really make sense. I guess that could have been true for last year too, but eventually it was just going to stop working, and it looks like it might be that time. And with 2 games, I don't think you play them. Washington, they're fun to watch. I could see you playing Beal if you need the points, but there are players, like I said, like Bertrand's, players that are really great for fantasy, but at 2 games, I don't think the ancillary characters are worth it. But I do, specifically David Bertrand, only owned in 68% of leagues. So he might be out there. It's like a third of leagues almost have him or still have him available. And some people might cut him, which would drop him into that, slight waiver chance. And if so, go grab him. He's tearing it up. He's shooting at will and getting a center who's going to jack up 8 threes a game. Not make 8 threes, but put up that many. It's going to give you an opportunity to really get some 3-point stats at a big man position, and that can really help your team depending on how your team is constructed. So looking at the schedule overall, you can look at everyone. What stood out to me is Memphis has a pretty good schedule, but remember, Ja's still out. His back hit that camera, so he's out with back spasms, and it's listed as week to week. I don't think he's going to be back this week, so take that into account. But they play Golden State, they play Phoenix, which just has an all-right defense, and they play quick enough, so this can be a good matchup. Milwaukee, which is interesting. Milwaukee has per the defensive efficiency numbers, actually the best defense in the league this week when we look at it. So if you're looking at it, they've actually dipped below the Lakers now, and they have the best. Last week, Toronto was the lowest for just the defensive stats. It was Toronto, then the Lakers, then Denver. Now we're looking at it, and it's Milwaukee and the Lakers. The Lakers ticked up a little bit, and everyone else got up over that 100. So Milwaukee, who has the best defense in the league, but is also playing at a great pace of play, which kind of evens them out into overall an all-right matchup. And that's why all this is a grain of salt. Like, you can still put up the numbers. And the pace of play, I assume that's just because Giannis can just fly, right? If you've ever gotten to see the Greek Freak live, it takes him like 4 steps to get a fast break from like one free throw line to the other. It's crazy. Also, it's the Greek Freak's birthday, so happy birthday, Giannis. Maybe I should have drank some Ouzo this week instead of beer for this week's games. All right, so Memphis and Milwaukee, who I was just talking about, they're playing Orlando, which has a slow pace of play and might be a little bit lower the game, but they get to go against the Saints. They get to go against the Pelicans, Memphis, and then Cleveland. No defenses who scare you. Honestly, that Cleveland game, I almost should have turned green too. By the strictest rules of like defensive efficiency, they wouldn't be in there, but they should be in there. And Giannis in particular might have a great game. Maybe Brook Lopez too. If you go look at what Jarrett Allen was able to do when they faced the Cleveland, that was his like 56 fantasy point game. If you're playing in a full points league or in DFS. So those 2 guys stood out. Those 2 teams stood out with some amazing schedule, and where maybe you're going to play some of those ancillary characters that you wouldn't normally get into your lineups. All right, moving on from that, let's take a look at the back-to-backs in case there's anything you have to worry about. No one with super concerns. If you notice, the Clippers do have a Minnesota and Chicago, both on the road. In fact, the Clippers and the Lakers are actually both playing all 4 games and 3 games. Both LA teams are spending all week on the road, if you look at it. So I don't know if there's going to be some rest there. Memphis has been resting their young guys. So there's a back-to-back there as well to be concerned about. But if they play against Washington, there's a really good matchup in there. So hopefully they don't get rested against either of those. And that's kind of it. I took it quick this week. Get you this information. I'm going to try and get the video out a little bit earlier too, in case anyone's trying to set their lineup and start looking ahead. Maybe pick up some guys and process waivers before their weekly locks happen. So if you're curious about seeing the sheets, down below, I've included a link. I'll also try and post it in the comments, pin it to the top so that you can get to my Google Sheet if you want to look at this. So thanks for watching. Get out there and win your week. And remember, it's fantasy. We're doing this to have fun. We get to watch basketball and compete with our friends or total strangers and gloat about it a little bit. Just as an anecdote, one of my buddies, Jeff, who I'm sure is watching, thanks for watching, Jeff, he sent a text this week. He said, "Hey, I took over first place in this league. It may only be by 0.5 games, but I'm in first right now and I'm pumped about it." That's great. It's early in the season, but not crazy early. We're about quarter way into the season. It matters where your standings are. What's also fun about basketball that you don't get in fantasy football is you can take over by a half a game to get you into first place. And then the next week, maybe it all slips. If you have a bad week, 8 or 9, people can climb up from the bottom. There's no point in giving up. So keep watching, keep posting your trades, and let's start figuring it out and win. But I want you guys having fun. I'm having fun doing this for you guys, and I appreciate the comments and likes. Thanks. Have a week, everybody. Oh, hey guys. I need to clear something up I forgot to say during the show. I want to thank Gixxer90, Gixxer90, for responding to last week's question of who should we call Lord Hobo? He posted simply, Lord Hobo equals Harden, and that's hard to argue with. Whether you're a hater or not, you know, yeah, he gets fouled, he goes to the line, but he's an amazing player. So I feel like the nickname Lord Hobo is pretty great, but also with that beard, it feels pretty obvious, and I think Gixxer nailed it. So, officially, Fantasy Basketball Analyzer will put another nickname in the books. Harden will be Lord Hobo, and thank you, Gixxer90, for posting it. Speaking of inside jokes and whatever, I'm wearing my Yacht Possum shirt. If you happen to know where it's from, go ahead and post it in the comments below. It's a different project that I work on, and I'm pretty proud of the work that's there, too.